equivocation, denounce anti-Semitism. We must also, without equivocation, denounce Islamophobia. And to all you hurting, those of you hurting, I want you to know I see you. You belong. And I want to say this to you. You're all America. You're all America. This is in a moment, in moments like these, when fear and suspicion, anger and rage run hard, that we have to work harder than ever to hold on to the values that make us who we are. We're a nation of religious freedom, freedom of expression. We all have a right to debate and disagree without fear of being targeted in schools or workplaces or in our communities.
What's going on, guys? I'm going to do a reaction to Joe Biden's speech. I don't see it on YouTube, but it looks like it's live, so I'm going to just keep it going. Welcome to today's episode, folks. We're going to watch a few clips of Biden's speech, then I'll react to it. God bless y'all. Thanks for being here.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? So Joe Biden just did a speech on Israel and Ukraine, and he was kind of tying the two together and making the point of like why we need to fund both of them. But at the same time, he was also talking about giving aid to Palestine and humanitarian aid. It's interesting stuff. Here's a few clips. We're going to listen to two, and then I'm going to react.
Israel's qualitative military edge, which we've committed to, the qualitative military edge. We're going to make sure Iron Dome continues to guard the skies over Israel. We're going to make sure other hostile actors in the region know that Israel is stronger than ever and prevent this conflict from spreading. Look, at the same time, President Netanyahu and I discussed again yesterday the critical need for Israel to operate by the laws of war. That means protecting civilians in combat as best as they can. The people of Gaza urgently need food, water, and medicine. Yesterday, in discussions with the leaders of Israel and Egypt, I secured an agreement for the first shipment of humanitarian assistance from the United Nations to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. If Hamas does not divert or steal these shipments, we're going to provide an opening for sustained delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance for the Palestinians. As I said in Israel, as hard as it is, we cannot give up on peace. We cannot give up on a two-state solution. Israel and Palestinians equally deserve to live in safety, dignity, and peace. And here at home, we have to be honest with ourselves.
So Biden, he's playing an interesting game here because he's basically saying that he wants Israel and Palestine to still have the two-state solution. And if you follow a lot of people like Ben Shapiro and others, maybe they'll pretend like they want a two-state solution, but it's pretty clear that they don't trust the whole thing of Palestine. There's a lot of people saying flatten it into a parking lot, destroy it. And Biden is, although he's obviously supporting Israel, he's giving them probably whatever they want. He's not going full-blown Ben Shapiro, and he's saying, listen, Palestine has the right to exist, and we're going to give them humanitarian aid, which is going to piss off a lot of people. I'm going to respond in full, but I just want to watch one more clip to give you guys context because he talked for about 15 minutes. He kind of tied together Israel and Ukraine, and you'll see in this next clip, he's using this as justification to give more money to Ukraine. Not that he needs it. He's been doing it anyway, but it's interesting stuff.
The terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world. But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain on others. In Israel, I saw people who are strong, determined, resilient, and also angry, in shock and in deep, deep pain. I also spoke with President Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, and reiterated that the United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination. The actions of Hamas terrorists don't take that right away. Like so many other, I'm heartbroken by the tragic loss of Palestinian life, including the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, which was not done by the Israelis. We mourn every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity. The assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine. people that were very badly hurt since Putin launched his all-out invasion. We've not forgotten the mass graves, the bodies found bearing signs of torture, rape used as a weapon by the Russians, and thousands of Ukrainian children forcibly taken into Russia, stolen from their parents. It's sick. Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it. Hamas' stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields, and innocent Palestinian families are suffering greatly because of them. Meanwhile, Putin denies Ukraine has or ever had real statehood. He claims the Soviet Union created Ukraine. And just 2 weeks ago, he told the world that if the United States and our allies withdraw, and if the United States withdraw, our allies will as well, military support for Ukraine would have, quote, a week left to live, but we're not withdrawing. I know these conflicts can seem far away, and it's natural to ask, why does this matter to America? So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security. You know,
so the whole speech was kind of weaving between Ukraine and Israel, and at the end, he talked about giving money and weapons to Ukraine again. I have to say this, because I don't know, maybe this will be unpopular, but the first thing I want to say is I wish Joe Biden gave this type of compassion that he gives to Israelis and Palestinians to American citizens who didn't get vaccinated, because he's got so much compassion for both sides of this war. And he's not wrong. I think it's nice to be nice, right? Like have passion or compassion and sympathy and empathy for both sides of this brutal conflict. But when Joe Biden talked about American citizens that didn't want to get the Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson vaccine, do you remember his rhetoric that winter of death and like everybody's going to die? Like Joe Biden came off as a full-blown psychopath to American citizens who wanted to opt out of a vaccine thing. And now he's like he sounds like such a nice guy. It's like, what do you even like? Does anybody like us in America? Do any American politicians care about us? I'm going to give an unpopular opinion about this speech, but listening to how much compassion he has for the Palestinian side and how much compassion he has for the Israeli side, where was that compassion for American citizens who just didn't want to shoot their arm with synthetic mRNA? Like it just sickens me to my core to know that so many American politicians really hate us, So it's like, where was this Joe Biden 2 years ago? He sounded like a deranged meth head when he was talking about unvaccinated Americans, but we all just are supposed to forget that, right? Speaking of which, as far as the entire speech, I know people are going to say this and that. I'll just let you know, I'm never going to vote for Joe Biden. I never have voted for Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden. I don't think I've ever given any good press to Joe Biden in any sort of form because he's pathetic and he's old and he's a joke and he's always been corrupt. But as far as every speech I've ever heard from him in that speech, I didn't think it was that terrible. I know that's going to be unpopular, but he's playing a game that is not being played on the right. And I'm not saying to trust him or like him, but he's saying that he doesn't think that every Palestinian is Hamas, which is absolutely true, which is now something that most of the right wing can admit. So I'm in a weird position because Joe Biden's terrible on the Ukraine war. I think Trump would do a better job. On this one, I think he's being somewhat reasonable. I mean, I'm not saying that he's your best friend, but he's trying to tell people, he's like, listen, although what the brutal terrorists did wrong was wrong, it doesn't mean every Palestinian's a terrorist, which is something that my entire Twitter feed of right-wingers are like, oh, we got to shut down all the protests because every Palestinian protest is Hamas. It's not true. Look at their last election. I don't even know if they had a real election, but the election, there's two different parties and Hamas didn't get 100% of the vote. And one of the things I saw was like 40-something%. The other one was like 20-something. There was a debate among who to elect as the government, and he's not any more popular than Gavin Newsom is in California. Should you be able to take the houses of everybody in California because Democrats voted for, Gavin Newsom? I mean, Republicans really have to think about this type of logic because the rhetoric on Israel from people like Ben Shapiro and stuff, in my opinion, psychotic, just like Biden's rhetoric on Ukraine is pretty psychotic and his rhetoric on the vaccines was psychotic. So this might not be popular, but there are a few things, although Biden's usually full of shit, and I don't believe a single word that he says. He's saying that he believes in a two-state solution. He talked to Netanyahu and said that you can't just do all this stuff just because you're mad at Hamas. He agrees that Hamas is a terrorist group. But Biden's saying something that you're not going to hear a lot of the right say, which is every Palestinian is not Hamas and everybody's not a terrorist. And, I didn't think the speech was that bad. I'm not going to lie. It's probably one of the only speeches I've ever heard from Biden that I wasn't completely disgusted by. But, in this world, I think that not all, because the base of conservatives, this is what I'm noticing. There's a disconnect between the Democrats and their voting base. Like Democrats, the NFL and the people who run the corporations are pro-Israel, but the BLM types are pro-Palestine. And now you have a disconnect between the people they vote for and, the voters. And on the right, I'm noticing a massive disconnect between what I would call conservative Inc., which is, I don't know. I mean, it's not really a real label, but I'll say Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk is, saying different stuff, but Dan Bongino and a lot of people that I noticed that are Israel, 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 Israel. If you go to a lot of their comment sections, not all of them, you're starting to notice a lot of people that are just questioning the narrative a little bit. Hey, Dave, it's okay that you like Israel, but why are you saying you want protests to get taken away? Dave's celebrating protests being shut down in France, yet, he's trying to make this false equivalency to say that, all Palestinian protests are Hamas. That's not true. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I think that Shapiro and stuff's going to be pissed at this because, Biden doesn't sound like he wants to flatten Palestine into a parking lot. And I think people like Ben want to flatten Palestine into a parking lot. So, the elites are going to do what they do. My opinion doesn't matter. They're going to fund Ukraine. They're going to fund Israel. Apparently, Biden's going to give humanitarian aid to Palestinians, which is going to upset a lot of right-wingers that probably just want to kill them all. It seems like things are escalating, but my read on it is Biden's trying to de-escalate it, and the right, not all of them, but a lot of them are trying to escalate it. And the people that don't escalate it, like the Tucker Carlsons and the Vivek Ramaswamis that are having more reasonable discussions, Candace Owens is one of them. You have this disconnect in the Republican Party now. Candace Owens, in my opinion, is making total sense. Vivek Ramaswamy is making some good points. Tucker Carlson has always been great on war. And the Shapiro wing of the party is how dare you? You're anti-Semitic. You're a piece of garbage. Everyone's a terrorist. And it's really crazy. So let me know what you guys think in the comment sections. I'm going to talk about a few other things real quick because yesterday or 2 days ago, I'm losing track of time. I apologize. There was a alleged hospital attack in Palestine that allegedly, at the time, people were saying killed hundreds of people, not millions, hundreds. I didn't talk about it. Why didn't I talk about it? Well, first of all, I'm not compromised, so I'm not working for either side, so I don't have to make a statement right away like a lot of people. They're just I got to say exactly what my side would want me to say right now. I'm not in Palestine. I'm not in Israel. I don't know who did it, and I could see the argument on both sides. So not to be a fence sitter, but to be accurate, I'm not going to jump on a story in a country the second it comes out and say my opinion. And what happened when that hospital allegedly blew up in Palestine? You had everybody that really supports Israel immediately made two different arguments at the same time, which was a little sketchy. Some people said Hamas did it. Hamas did it. They fired a rocket and they destroyed their own hospital. Maybe. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Maybe. And then you had other people that were saying whether they did it or not, it's their fault. So even if Israel did it, it doesn't matter because they shouldn't have been there. You had people saying they should have evacuated, get out of the way, we're going to bomb you. And then it gets hit. And then it's we didn't do it. And then you had the Palestinian side, obviously, or people that are more sympathetic to Palestine than Israel. They started making the argument that it must have been Israel. Israel destroyed the hospital. And I understand that people are going to side with their side or whatever. But, the reason I didn't say much is because, one, I'm not sure. But also, I want to wait a couple hours because who knows? There's going to be propaganda on both sides. Both countries know if they can get sympathy from the world that they can gain more leverage in this war that they're fighting. So there's reason for both sides to lie. There's reason for, both sides to exaggerate or cause it. So I'm not saying I know, but I just kind of stayed out of it. And you saw people the second it happened, they're well, it had to be this. It had to be this. And it's How do you know? And if you jump so quickly to the defense of a foreign government the second it happened with it's like, who, is it not obvious what's going on? And then I would say, as somebody that is unbiased and could see the both sides of the argument, I know now they're saying it's debunked or whatever, but if one side says, leave your country, we're going to bomb you, get the hell out of there, everyone should leave, we're going to bomb the crap out of it. And then they say, get out of that building, get out of that stuff, we're going to bomb it. And then it gets bombed. Obviously, I understand why people think that the other country did it, because they pretty much said, get out of the way, we're bombing the shit out of your country like soon. As far as Hamas, I mean, they could have misfired it as well. And now there's people trying to act like it didn't even happen. I don't know. I haven't really weighed in on it, but I'm just saying, like, watching how people are acting, I think people are just like siding with whoever they already think it is, and they're not really critically thinking at all. With the situation and the Biden speech, I would just say the Democrats are playing a different game than the Republicans in this world, in this war. I would say in the Ukraine war, Biden, most Democrats and some Republicans are like, fund Ukraine, support Ukraine. And if you don't support Ukraine, you're pro-Putin, and your only existence as an American citizen is to work and pay taxes to foreign country. And if you don't do it, we'll call you a terrorist or pro-Putin. And it's like, all right, well, I've always been on the side of, I don't hate Ukraine. I don't hate Russia. I think Ukraine has a right to defend themselves and exist. And I think Putin has a right to be kind of ticked off at what NATO and the rest of the world is doing. And I side with America, but I don't necessarily want to fund all my money to Zelensky all the time. And I don't think that us funding all this money is necessarily going to create peace. And at a certain point in the Ukraine war, we need to strike a peace deal, because it doesn't look like Russia is going to be able to like take over all of Ukraine. And I don't know that they ever wanted to. And I don't know how long Ukraine's going to fight, because you're not going to beat Russia per se. Like, what? So when does this conflict end? It ends when people make a deal. Like, there has to be a deal made. And the truth is, and I think RFK and other candidates talk about this quite often, it's not just one side. You could just say it's one-sided over there, but America has infringed, and our allies and NATO have infringed on certain agreements that we talked about for years and decades, and that caused tension in that region. But long story short, I think as a voter, Republicans make more sense on Ukraine, and Democrats are just completely in the bag. And there's a lot of speculation on why that is, but everyone can see that there's more Republicans against that war. And pretty much all Democrats seem to be in favor of it for the most part, except for like RFK. When it comes to the Israel thing, there's a huge disconnect, regardless of what you think or not. There's a huge disconnect in the Republican Party. And I would say that it's almost 50-50. And I would say audience-wise, more people are not on the side of the Ben Shapiro types and the Dan Bongino types. I know his audience agrees with him, but if you look at a lot of the comment sections on Instagram and Twitter, etc., it seems like the Republican Party is split. You have people that are, incredibly Zionist and incredibly pro-Israel. And I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just like, at what cost? Like, are you pro-Ukraine? At what cost? Are you pro-Israel? Okay, at what cost? Are you willing to sell out your own First Amendment for a foreign country? To me, that's when it crosses the line, but apparently that's anti-Semitic to notice that. So you're not even allowed to defend your First Amendment in America. That's too far. But in general, it's like, a lot of the audiences have learned a lot, and they're wondering, like, what are we really doing here? Like, what do you want to do? You want to flatten Gaza into a parking lot? I mean, it's already pretty screwed up. You want to not have a two-state solution because you think that every Palestinian is Hamas, so you just want to kill them all or send them to another country. If you try to do that, I don't think it's working. I think Israel seems like it backed off a little bit. It seems like Biden's telling Israel to back off a little bit, and I doubt Israel listens to Joe Biden anyway, because who listens to Joe Biden? But in general, the Israel-Palestine conflict, as much as people want to act like it's not complex, it is complex, because now you're bringing in the Arab world. Now they're allied in many ways through, proxy groups, etc., with Iran. Iran is, I would say, aligned with China and Russia unofficially. And also a lot of our allies in the Middle East are heavily on the Palestine side. And I follow some people, or I have friends that are not really political, right? And most of my non-political friends are on the side of Palestine. Left-wingers are on the side of Palestine. A lot of Arab people are on the side of Palestine. I would say Africa, people like Malik Obama. If you guys don't know Malik Obama, that's Barack Obama's brother who wears a Trump hat, and he's from Africa, and he says Trump, 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 Trump. I think he likes QAnon. You know, Malik Obama is a huge Trump supporter, but he also supports Palestine because, not saying just because he's from Africa, but most of the world sees that conflict differently. And I'm not telling you what to believe or what not to believe. I'm just saying, getting into a massive, let's flatten that whole country and just kick them out completely and send them to other countries. It sounds good when Ben Shapiro says it. It sounds good when Dan Bongino's freaking out or whoever is. But in reality, you know, it sounds good when Jordan Peterson says what he wants to do, but he sits there and, you know, would never fight a war. I have a new influencer boxing match. I challenge Jordan Peterson to a boxing match. If he wins, if Jordan Peterson can beat me in a boxing match, I'll stop doing political commentary. If I win the boxing match against Jordan Peterson, he has to go fight in a foreign war that he wants to fight in, and he's got to bring Nikki Haley to Tel Aviv so she could be a barista at a Starbucks there. And that seems like a fun, challenge. But anyway, it's like, it's easy to say all this stuff, and I understand counterwise, it's easy to not say. If you're in Israel or you're in Palestine, you know, the tension is escalated. So I understand that there's going to be different opinions for different people that are in the heat of the war. But in general, I think that what Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson want to do, and what America wants Israel to do, and what Israel even can do, you know, it might be a different thing, because you don't want to bring the entire Arab world into this conflict when we're getting along with half the Arab world right now. And, or maybe you do. Maybe you do want to flatten a whole country into a parking lot, kill millions of people, say that they're all terrorists, and ban the First Amendment in America and call someone a terrorist if they want to ban it. I just think that they're going to run into some problems. So I don't know. I guess to make a long story short, I watched a video of Hamas on Twitter. I guess they did a Vice interview. How are they getting interviews? I have no idea. But in general, he's talking about BLM and George Floyd, and, sounds like a leftist. And I'm not saying he is a leftist, because they're probably just lying to Americans to try to get your sympathy and get left wingers on their side. But it's like, Hamas committed a terrorist act. I don't in any way, shape, or form feel connected to them at all. But I don't want to be called Hamas because I don't agree with Ben Shapiro on everything. Like, this is the world we live in. And it's like, if you just slightly disagree with Ben Shapiro, you're an anti-Semite Hamas supporter, and Ben Shapiro is acting like a psychopath. Like, everything's Hamas. Everybody, that's the Hamas caucus. Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. They're all Hamas. Is everybody in California a Democrat? And should they have their property seized? Because I believe the election for Gavin Newsom went in Gavin Newsom's favor, even more than the Hamas Fatah party, or whatever the hell the other party was I was looking up. Like, they didn't all vote for them. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Hopefully we could figure something out and not drain every American dry in the process. I would say this also that I noticed, because I've been talking about this, but I think this is really like a key issue for American citizens. Of course, you should have sympathy and empathy for tragedies in the world and other people. I'm not telling you to be selfish, but every time a tragedy happens, Americans are not stupid. And I know a lot of people, the left tries to treat us like we're stupid. The right tries to treat us like we're stupid. A lot of people want to shame you into being patient and say that silence is violence and you're ISIS now if you're quiet because you're trying to figure stuff out. But we're not stupid, okay? Our history is filled with false flags. Like, that's proven American history. Our history is filled with stories like babies in incubators and weapons of mass destruction and Syria. Like, that is our real American history. So Americans are trying to look at this and be like, of course I want to support this country and support these people, but when a tragedy happens, we always lose things. We always lose freedom. We always lose liberty. 15 wars break out that have nothing to do with that war. So we have every right as American citizens to try to be like, well, yeah, I want to help Ukraine, but at what cost? Like, what is everything our business all the time? I guess so. Is there ever a time that we're allowed to look at ourselves and be like, can we talk about our own deficiencies in our own country, or no, we got to go and do everything else? But, isn't it weird that Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump will fly to a foreign country when neither of them are president, but they can't agree on a border wall. Like, it's just kind of weird, It's pretty, like, in Israel, could you imagine if if half the country is like, we don't need a wall? You probably do need a wall in Israel because there's people on the other side that don't like you, and it's a great idea to have a wall. And I don't know that any politician are there politicians in Israel like there are in America that say, I want to tear down the wall? Probably not, but we'll see. On that note, I do want to bring this up because I think it's one of the most important things I figured out recently. And this has kind of been my perspective for years as an American citizen that watches trends and patterns, and our liberty just gets stripped away by both parties as they divide and conquer. I posted in Israel, similar to in Ukraine, and I'm just going to repeat it because it's very relevant. In Ukraine, when the war broke out, Zelensky, who is not a popular president, or he was popular enough to win, but possibly could have lost the next election, he seized all the media under wartime policy. He started, in many ways, going after churches and Orthodox churches because they were connected with Russia in some way, or he said they were. They, I think, consolidated all the media into the hands of the state. So as soon as the war broke out in Ukraine, oh, I guess it's a communist country now. Oh, well, no media, no opposition, no elections, no political parties, just us and the people that we agree with. So, haha, democracy. And that's democracy, right? This is the whole obvious scandal. I don't care if you're pro-Ukraine, pro-Russia, you like this guy, you love Zelensky, you took a picture with him, you don't like him. I don't care. The truth is, everybody in American and Western media said we need to go to Ukraine to save democracy as they're ripping democracy out. How is it democracy if Zelensky can control all the media, which happened? How is it democracy if he bans other political parties? How is it democracy if they could cancel an election? And everyone's telling you that it's for democracy. So the reason I don't agree with the media is not because I'm pro-Putin. It's not because I'm Russian. It's not because I'm this or that. It's because I know they're lying. I can't tell you what's going on and what everything that's going to happen, but if you say we need to give money to this country to save democracy as you literally rip democracy out of the country, well, now I don't believe you. And like a lot of people are saying in the comment section, we used to believe that our country was like the good guys. And that kind of thought process is not registering with a lot of people because they're not stupid. Like, they treat us like we're stupid. Some people are for sure, but a lot of people aren't. With that being said, in Israel, I showed the report that they are considering the communications director of the Likud party, which is Netanyahu's party, directing police to arrest civilians, remove them from their homes, seize their property if they believe that they have spread information that could harm national morale or serve as enemy propaganda. So just like Joe Biden called you the enemy for not getting a vaccine, just like Joe Biden called you the enemy for not voting for him or whatever he thinks, now that could be an offense if this were Israel. It's not. That could be an offense to steal your property and throw you in prison. But here's what I want to repeat, because I didn't realize that so many people actually agreed with this. And you should take note if you're an American citizen and you're not trapped in the left, right, red, blue, Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, we're going to die, whatever. If you're not caught in that state of fear where they can control you, you should realize what I'm about to tell you. When I did this report on my Instagram, a lot of people agreed with what Israel's doing. I just read another comment, and I'm going to go through a few more. A guy who had an Israeli or a Jewish star in his bio, he said, Anomaly, we need to do this. Like, he's saying I thought he lived in Israel, but it turns out he lives in America. So an American citizen who is either also Israeli or has sympathy to Israeli, or I'm not really sure. I don't really care. I'm just saying he's an American citizen, but he said when it came to Israel. So I guess he might be a dual citizen or whatever. He's justifying the fact that the government of Israel is going to seize people's property, remove them from their homes, and throw them in prison if they harm national morale, which is an extremely broad topic. So this is my question to American citizens. If Dan Bongino doesn't cover this story, if Ben Shapiro doesn't cover this story, and a lot of conservatives in my comment section are justifying that and saying, I don't understand Israel. And one guy even said, we don't need the government to do that because in our country, we'll go after them even quicker and we'll seize their property. do people not realize that they probably want to do that here too? And I'm not trying to scare people, but it's like that. If you want to do that in Ukraine, knock yourself out. But I'm not going to say it's democracy. If Israel's a tough country because you've only been around for 80, 90 years and, people are pissed off and it's getting really dicey and you want to just seize the property of everyone who disagrees with Netanyahu, even though people were protesting him 3 weeks ago, if you want to justify that and say but you don't even live in Israel, that's a little weird. But in general, I don't control that country and I don't want to. I understand it's a dicey situation over there and you have every right to do that in Israel. But if you live in America and you're justifying it, and I watched some Christians say that too. They're like, anomaly. Oh, I'm a Christian. Yeah, we should let the government go after the communists. They'll say you're the communist. What are you talking about? Do you realize that Joe Biden's the president right now? The amount of people that are justifying the government seizing property and throwing people out of their homes is way bigger than people realize on the conservative side. And under an emergency, people always justify this, but I wouldn't trust Trump, DeSantis, or Joe Biden to do that stuff. But apparently a lot of American citizens that are sympathetic to Israel think that that's totally fine. And my question is, would they ever want to do it here? And this is why I've been challenging Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro, et cetera. I'm not trying to hate on them in any way. And I think Ben Shapiro makes a lot of good points and Dave Rubin makes a lot of good points. But in general, and someone said screenshots, just go to my Instagram, Dream Rare. You could go read the comments. There's a lot of people that obviously disagree. There's obviously Israelis that disagree and Americans that disagree. I'm not saying everyone's the same, but there's way more support for doing that than I thought. And you could just go read the comments yourself instead of taking my word for it. Anyway, with that being said, the reason I've always told you about stuff is I've seen in America, they've already started passing legislation to go down the path of doing what they're doing in Ukraine and Israel, which is seize people's property and make it illegal to disagree with the government. And you would say, well, that can't happen in America, but it already really has. And there's somebody going to jail for 7 months for posting a meme. You got, I think Owen Schroyer is going to prison. My friend said, I haven't followed the court case, but my buddy told me that one of the things that they charged him on to do like a bigger case was like, he said death to tyrants. So now if you say that, they could trump up the charges. You know what I'm saying? And say that you saying death to tyrants mean that you were trying to kill somebody and now you got to go to prison. Like they're already exaggerating in this country. I'm not saying, and nowadays I want to say this too, to anybody that cares. I like people that listen to me. I appreciate you. Listen to who you want to listen to, listen to whatever podcast you want to follow. I'm not saying this because I'm jealous. I'm just being honest with you. A lot of ways that people are talking, like a lot of these like pro-Trump accounts, and I'm not saying everybody, millions of Trump people are great. Hundreds of millions of people who like Donald Trump are good. I think he's getting a raw deal. But the vibes in Trump world, the same way it's like January 6th was a big setup, I can't tell the difference anymore between feds and a lot of Trump supporters. And I'm not saying they're all feds. I'm not trying to like scare people. I'm just saying they act like feds. In this world, if you want to play chess, they're arresting people for memes. They're arresting people for saying death to tyrants. They're throwing people in prison and stealing their property in other countries while they're passing laws in America to essentially make boycotts and protests illegal. And you got certain influencers like Dave Rubin cheering on the removal of protests in a foreign country. You have people like Ben Shapiro who will tweet out what anti-Semitism is while they're passing laws that say that it's now hate speech to say that, and it's not legal in certain parts of the countries. All I'm saying in general is like, and I know that they don't like Trump, but in general, I'm just saying like, the reason I don't follow a lot of these podcasters is because they just talk and act like feds. They just rile their base up while the FBI is like waiting for you. And they're like, yo, do something stupid so we can go after you. And then people are like, let's just act stupid and talk stupid. And it's like, I was talking to my buddy on the phone today, and it's the perfect analogy is like, if you're in a fight, right? I'm a big fan of boxing, MMA, mixed martial arts, UFC. You can't just throw all your punches at the first second. It's a 5-round fight. It's a 12-round fight. If it's boxing, whatever it is, you got to be strategic when you're in a battle. And people, like a lot of the people that are leading the Trump supporters now, it's like they're telling you to throw all your biggest punches in the air at nobody, and then you're tired and you get knocked out in 30 seconds. Like that's the equivalent to what I see is becoming the status quo in this movement. Is like people are so desperate to beat Biden and so desperate to, get Donald Trump back that they're not even thinking about what they're doing in a world that is no longer a joke anymore. It's like you can't just exhaust all your punches in thin air and say you're playing chess. You're not. They're playing chess. And that's why so many people on the other side are ending up in a prison. And I'm not telling people to not exercise your First Amendment. You still have that right, but just be smart about what you say and when you say, because you don't have the luxury and the freedom to say everything. And like, for what? Like you're doing all this stuff for who? For a guy that sells vaccines? It's just like, it's just so weird now, like the way people are acting and talking. And one of the things that I see, I don't support Hamas. I don't like Hamas. I have nothing in common with them. I don't vote for them. I don't give a shit about them. No offense. It's like fucking, you know what I'm saying? I have nothing to do with them. I'm not a Palestinian activist. I'm not a Palestinian protester. And no offense, but I'm not going to sit and pretend like I'm Palestine's biggest fan yesterday just because I have a disagreement with Ben Shapiro or whatever. So I'm just getting that out of the way. I'm just being authentic to who I am. It's not my thing necessarily. With that being said, watching the Republican Party try to brainwash their voting base into thinking that every Palestinian is a Hamas and every Palestine protest is a Hamas protest, and they want to give your government the power to shut that down while it's being shut down on you, it's such a controlled op shit show. One guy that got mad at me on Twitter today, and I'm not just saying this to cry about Twitter, it's just like a fascinating social experiment. He was trying to use that logic and say that every Palestinian protest is a Hamas protest and they're all terrorists. And then the last post he made before that was him complaining about like Trump supporters getting rounded up like animals and thrown in jail. And I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Is this guy a Fed? Or does everybody in MAGA just act like Feds now? And I'm not just blaming MAGA because a lot of the DeSantis people are worse when it comes to this war. But I'm just saying it's like, did these people not see this stuff? It's like, yeah, we want to round them all up and exaggerate and throw them out. But it's happening to us, and I can't believe it's happening. It's like, of course it's happening to you because you've justified that. Like you can't, the First Amendment, unfortunately, doesn't work that way. It's like you can't just give up everything and then it's going to come back to you. It doesn't work like that. You got to hold firm to your values. So in general, someone said deaf Fed. But that's the thing though. It's like, dude, half of these influencers that are just screaming all the time on their social media, they act like Feds. I'm not saying everybody's a Fed. I'm not paranoid. I'm just saying like, what's the, if you go to like a QAnon thing, it's like, it's probably filled with Feds, but also like all the people there act like Feds anyway. Like, what's the difference? Like you could say anything to a Q person and they'd believe you. They're like, dude, Trump's arresting Germany with the lockdown. Stay focused, patriots. When you go to jail, it's Hillary going to jail. The reason that everyone's going to jail around you is because Trump's in an underground tunnel with Nikola Tesla and Batman, and he's just waiting for the right time to go to the moon, which is owned by China, and then he's going to arrest Xi Jinping with George Soros. It's like, like you could make up any stupid thing and they'd like believe you. They'd be like, oh yeah, we're going to go to the Capitol. It's like, it's hard to distinguish who's who because they act so goofy and so gullible. But in general, and I saw Sidney Powell did some sort of plea deal or something today. God knows what's happening with all that stuff, but I don't even want to get into it. In general though, I just want people to be really smart, and I'm going to just say the truth of what I actually think. I don't like Joe Biden. I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. The Democratic Party is the worst party in almost every category when it comes to domestic policy. But one thing that you're starting to notice with a lot of these people, including Trump and DeSantis and Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro and Dan Bongino and all these other people, I'm just saying, like, I have to question even myself is like, hey, agree to disagree. I don't care if you agree with me. Like, if we have different policies, whatever. It's America. That's a beautiful thing. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, but I'm starting to wonder, like, yeah, the Republican Party is the better party, or are they just the party that pretends to be the better party and then just like sells you out? Like the Judas goat. The Judas goat is the animal that they use to sheep herd everybody, and then you go with him because you think you're going to heaven, and then they send you to hell. So it's like, are they really better? You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously Biden, his attorney general, will throw people in prison for sharing a voting meme that Democrats also shared. So how in the world could I vote for Joe Biden when his administration seems crazy? But then when it comes to Ukraine, Joe Biden's worse than Republicans. But then when it comes to Israel, to me, his speech, as old as he said a lot of stuff that you'll never hear most Republicans say, which is all Palestinians are not Hamas. That's true. But that Ben Shapiro would call me a terrorist over that. He would call me an anti-Semite, a terrorist. He'd call me Hamas. And what do you think they wanted? What do you think Ben Shapiro wants to do to terrorists? Do you think he wants terrorists to live? Do you think he wants terrorists to be able to speak? Ben Shapiro has made it really clear what he wants to do with terrorists. He wants to turn them into parking lots. He wants to turn the whole country into parking lots. So if Ben Shapiro calls the entire country a terrorist group, he wants to kill them. And he's pretty much admitted that. Okay, so if he calls everyone, half the country in America, terrorists, if you disagree with him, you're a terrorist. If you do this, you're a terrorist. You're a terrorist. What do you think he wants to do with you? You know what I'm saying? If he's willing to exaggerate that far and call everybody anti-Semitic who disagrees with them, I've never said that Ben doesn't have the right to support Israel. Of course he does. He could support them. He can defend them. He can do whatever he wants, and I think it's totally fine. But if you're going that far to say that every protest is a terrorist protest, you're a psychopath. How? You're not necessarily the lesser of two evils anymore. If Joe Biden's going to sit on television and say, listen, Hamas is a terrorist organization, but every Palestinian kid is not Hamas, and Ben Shapiro says the opposite, he's worse on that topic. You know what I'm saying? So it's at a point where I'm very uninspired to vote because I'm not sure who wants to throw me in a gulag more. Is it Joe Biden? Probably. Is it Shapiro-style, DeSantis people? Maybe. Is Trump really that different? No, he's just a funnier guy, so everybody thinks he's so much different. Someone said, dude, you shouldn't respond to exaggerations with exaggerations of your own. You don't think somebody that says that they want to literally flatten an entire country and then will call anyone else terrorists? Like, what do you think they want to do? Play patty cakes with you? I know what I think of actual terrorist organizations. I'm talking about ones that kill innocent people and stuff. It's horrible. They should be handled with, but I don't sit and say everybody's a terrorist because of what they did, but that's not common now in the Republican Party. They're saying that further and further and further, including DeSantis. So it's like, this is one topic where I vehemently disagree with them. And I already know that they're years ahead of this stuff. I'll give you an example real quick if you guys want to stay tuned. I could probably just print it out if you would like and, show you, because I want to be very accurate and clear with it. So if you just wait a second, I'll print it out. I should probably do a whole presentation on it. Hold on, but whatever, we're live. Let me see. Well, I'm going to just show you an example of what I'm talking about. Bang. I'm going to save it. I'm going to print it, and then I'm going to do it. Someone said bring the receipts. Oh, I got it. Don't worry. All right, printing it. Because I've said this a few times, and I realize that when I say things and I don't show people, I just sound crazy. And the only reason that multiple reasons, but the reason I want people to realize this and I want to show people this is because I, as an American citizen, I feel like your right to speak freely and not have people shutting down your speech and basically making it illegal for you to say things that are peaceful. It's everything in America. Someone said if Biden really cared about national security, he'd close the border. He doesn't. Biden doesn't care about you, I promise you. I didn't listen to that speech and think, oh, Biden really cares about us. I just thought that wasn't the worst thing I've ever heard from him. But yeah, Biden doesn't give a shit about you. Neither does the Republicans. They're just better at pretending. Democrats are good at pretending they give a shit about black people and Hispanics and liberals and gay people. And they're really good at pretending that, but they're totally lying. And the right is really good at pretending that they care about patriots and cowboys and people in the South, but they don't, So it's I don't see as much different. I just want to show you this real quick because this can debunk Ben's logic within 2 minutes, right? And this is why I'll never get to speak anywhere, and they'll just smear me in the press, and Ben's fine with it. But whatever. He tweeted this in 2019, right? He said, "American Jews, whether ethnic or religious, are loyal to America, not Israel. Any dual loyalty supposition is anti-Semitism, right? So Ben says American Jews are loyal to America, not Israel. Suggesting otherwise means you're an anti-Semite. So despite Ben's entire existence, his entire feed, if you look at Ben Shapiro in the last 2 weeks and say you like Israel, that's technically anti-Semitism, according to Ben. Ben said that what got him into politics in America was Israel. He admitted that on a podcast, but that's anti-Semitic. And also, Ben said that in an interview recently that his loyalty to America relies on the fact that Israel exists. So anyway, Ben thinks that American Jews are loyal to America, not Israel, and suggesting otherwise means you're an anti-Semite. So if you look at Ben Shapiro's Twitter feed and say, hey, Ben Shapiro seems like a pretty loyal guy to Israel, right? I mean, anybody who listens to him would probably think that, but no, that's actually anti-Semitism, according to Ben. Okay, so millions of American Jews actually don't like Israel. There's Jews that went to the Capitol yesterday, and obviously they didn't get called insurrectionists because they're not right-wing, but in general, there were Jews against Israel or Jews for Palestine or whatever the hell you want to say at the Capitol yesterday. And then Ben Shapiro calls them Hamas. So it's like Ben Shapiro simultaneously, he's the most disingenuous person in conservative politics who's just very good at pretending. He says that it's anti-Semitism to say that any Jew has loyalty to Israel, but then when a Jew in America doesn't have loyalty to Israel, he calls him a Hamas terrorist. Do you get it? You're either an anti-Semite or a terrorist. Pick one. Ben thinks you're one of them. I don't think all Jewish people in America think the same. I know it's not true, and I don't treat them like a monolith because in many ways they're not. You know, not everybody's responsible for what everyone's doing, and I've never blamed everyone for what everyone's doing. But any intelligent person within 2 seconds, how could you say that it's anti-Semitism to say that somebody has loyalty to Israel, but then if they don't, you call them Hamas? People don't get it. It's insane. And the part about this too is exactly what he said is being passed into legislation by DeSantis and Donald Trump. And I think over 30 states made it illegal to boycott, divest, or sanction Israel. So it's actually illegal in many places to even boycott Israel in America. You could boycott America in America. You could boycott Trump in America. You could boycott Biden in America. You could boycott white people in America. You can't boycott black people in America. I don't think that would probably be racist or whatever. But like, there's a lot of things you could do in America, but every country is like, I mean, why would you want to boycott people like that? I'm just saying in general, there's more laws to protect that country than there is to protect your own country in your country. But then it's also simultaneously hate speech to notice that or talk about it. You have to literally just never notice it or never talk about it. You get what I'm saying? So, and someone said that they are Hamas supporters. Here's the thing though, Hamas was not the government of Palestine for all of Palestinian existence. So if Joe Biden becomes the president and you don't like Joe Biden, but you like America, are you a terrorist? If you think Joe Biden's a terrorist, are you a terrorist because you voted for Trump, but Biden won? Are you not thinking straight? You think every Jew that protests for Palestine is Hamas because Ben Shapiro brainwashed you or Dan Bongino? Really? And now they're calling for the removal of protests in this country when they're saying nothing about other countries that are throwing people in prison for disagreeing with the government. Why aren't they talking about that? Because they probably agree with it. It's so obvious. So I'm not asking you to support a terrorist organization. Obviously, you shouldn't. But if you go and say everybody of this country supports their government and they're all terrorists and they all deserve to die or they all deserve to lose their protesting rights, is that not applied to you? Why wouldn't it apply to you? What did Obama do in the Middle East? What did George Bush do in the Middle East? What does Biden do in America? Biden's a psychopath. I didn't vote for him. Should I have my house stolen from me because people don't like Joe Biden? Like, do you really believe that? Who's telling you this stuff? I know all of like Republican media is telling people this stuff, but like people really believe it? It's insane. And that's why I agree with that part of Biden's speech. I'm just being honest. He says the truth in that topic, which is not every Palestinian is them. But this is why the whole two-party system doesn't matter. They'll do the Ukraine war. They'll do the Israel war. They'll sell out your First Amendment there. They'll sell out your First Amendment there. They'll lock the country down. They'll sell the vaccines. They'll mandate the vaccines. They'll say that they didn't need to mandate the vaccine. Like, it's all, this is why I'm not even that upset anymore, is because I already figured it out where it's like, it doesn't, it's like a bunch of actors that just make you get mad at each other. And it's like 15 years of like not caring about the Muslim versus Christian thing. And overnight it's George W. Bush again. And you got multiple principled conservatives calling for the removal of protests because every protest is terrorism. You don't get that? How do you not get that? How do you not understand how that's going to be used against you? It already has been used against you. It's insane. You trust your it's ridiculous. Someone said I'm black pilled on both parties. Yes, not really necessarily a black pill though, because this is the false logic that people have. They think ignoring reality is going to change reality. I start with Democrats to explain it so people don't have a conniption. If a Democrat says my city's really safe and I don't even notice that crime's on the rise, or my city's really clean, like imagine if you're a Democrat and you're walking around Los Angeles barefoot and you're stepping on shit and needles and drugs. And I say, hey, Democrat, the cities are filthy, disgusting in Los Angeles. Like they're disgusting. And they look at you and they go, what are you, black pilled? What are you, a pessimist? And I'm like, no, I'm not a pessimist. I'm just saying the streets are objectively dirty and it's weird to walk bare feet in LA. It's not safe. And they say, oh, you're just a black pilled pessimist. I'm an optimist. It's not optimism. It's like, it's stupidity. So when you go to Republicans, if you say, well, I've done my research, I've worked on this for 8 years, and I've come to the conclusion that there's certain things that Trump and DeSantis won't do. There's certain ways that they're going to bow down, and they're just putting on a show for you. And you say, oh, that's pessimism. You're black-pilled. Believing in a fairy tale doesn't make you an optimist. You're going to be mad. And this is why I disagree with a lot of conservative accounts, because they're riling their base up, and you're getting angrier and angrier and angrier. But it's aimless anger. You're not getting anywhere because they're giving you a fake script. So you're always pissed at this person, that person, this person, but they're pissing you off to steal stuff from you. They're pissing you off at that country so they could tell you that it's okay to take away your First Amendment for that group of people. That's always how they do it. You think a tyrant would walk through and say, hey, we're just going to take your freedom of speech because you're a piece of shit and we think you're an animal and, you're too stupid and poor to have any rights. So we're just going to take all your shit because you're poor and stupid. Like, no, they don't tell you that. They say, oh, it's an emergency. We have to do it now, but we're doing it to make it safer for you. It's safer to shut the whole world down and sell vaccines. It's safer to tell you can't go to a beach. It's safer to print trillions of dollars. It's safe to do that. It's the same thing the Dan Bonginos and the Ben Shapiros of the world do. They're painting this hysterical picture as people that they're aligned with and as people in their party are sucking your rights away, and they're using the craziest thing going on to convince you that it's okay. And half of their followers are like, yeah, that's great. Shut down the protests. That's how they do it. Tyrants don't and the left, you think the left knows what they're doing? Some of them do. Most of them are confused. They just don't like Republicans, understandably so. They don't, respect most conservative influencers. They don't. So they perceive that they're the good party, and they perceive that taking away your speech and shutting you down and throwing you in jail is a good thing. They think it's okay because you're a bad person. So it's okay if you go to jail for 7 months over a meme, or it's okay if you get removed from Reddit, or it's okay that your Facebook account got deleted because you're just a bad boy and your opinion on sexuality is just too mean. They don't think that they're doing it for the wrong reasons. The only reason that these things work is because people perceive them as righteous. It's a righteous thing. So the right does the same thing with anti-Semitism. And I'll tell you what, Candace Owens knows it. A lot of people know it. She did a video on it today. It's like they've been doing this for 5 years though. So, anytime a conflict arises, they're going to use it as a place to fast track it. And I figured this out. And you know what? I'm coming to the conclusion that there's a reason that those people are allowed to be where they are. It's like a humiliation ritual game. It's like, you can be here. You could be the guy. You could get booked. You can have all the shows. You can have the radio gigs. But there's certain lines you just don't cross to get it. And if you ever did cross it, you lose it. So they either are completely aware of what they're doing, or, it's like they're in on it. It's like, I don't care if you like a country I don't like, or you like a country I do like, or or you have, you say we should fund Ukraine billions of dollars. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to shut down groups of people who are saying that Zelensky's awesome or Zelensky deserves all our money. You should be allowed to say Zelensky deserves all the money in the world. But you can't then shut down my response to it. And that's what's going on both sides. Is the left wing says certain stuff. Most of what they're saying is not true. And then they say that the opposition is racist, sexist, xenophobic, and whatever. And then they use that as justification to take away your stuff, take away your reach, take away your money, take away, in some cases, your right to even say it, and try to cancel it. On the right, it's the same thing. Everything that Dave Rubin has ever claimed to stand for is a total farce. It's that, except for one topic, and then he turns into a raging far leftist and says that that we need to cancel protests and all speech is not. And I've seen people say silence is violence, silence is ISIS, hate speech is not free speech. Like, these are conservatives. These are conservatives that get to do the speaking gigs at TPUSA because the people know that those are the ones that are going to say that stuff. That's like, they tell you, and this is why I've always said this stuff. I'm not a jealous person. I don't need anything. I'm not desperate for fame or money. Nobody needs to help me. I'm not a victim to anybody. The only reason I've ever challenged these people is because I realized at a certain point that that's what they're there for. They're there to give you 8 out of 10 things you agree with. And then when a tragedy breaks out, miraculously, they're on the wrong side of the equation. And you'll notice certain patterns, like, during the pandemic, Ben Shapiro was basically trying to cancel Louis Farrakhan because he told black people not to get the vaccine. And Ben Shapiro kept saying, well, he's anti-Semitic and, he hates black people. And Ben Shapiro was like so mad that Louis was telling black people not to take the vaccine. And I'm not telling Ben to like Farrakhan because obviously he never will. I'm just saying, like, Ben was using these sort of things, anti-Semitism, anti-science, to try to stop a black leader from telling black people not to get the vaccine as Ben was telling them to get the vaccine. This is why the First Amendment's important, because regardless of who that is, you don't want a self-righteous guy who thinks he's so much smarter than everyone else misleading people when push comes to shove. And that's what he did. And he finally apologized a year and a half later. Why was if he's so smart, why was I able to see through it, guys? People always say, Anomaly's not smart. It's because I don't talk like I'm a scholar at Harvard, but I'm very intellectual. But in general, it's like, you're so dumb, this and that. Yeah, sure. Let's go with the theory that I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb. I didn't finish college. I'm not a math expert. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. Why was I able to see through the COVID propaganda early and he wasn't able to see it until 2 years later? He was on the wrong side for like a year. Why? It's because I actually try. I don't think these people are trying. You know what I'm saying? You could say they are, but I don't think they are. And a lot of it's like ego too. When Scott Adams was like wrong, Scott Adams is like part genius, part moron. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, Scott Adams is a successful guy. I don't dislike Scott Adams, even though he blocked me on Twitter. I always thought of him as like a friendly imbecile. Like, he's like a big friendly dummy. But in general, he was wrong for a while. And then it took him like a year to admit he was wrong because his ego is so huge. For example, I think I'm smart enough to be speaking to you right now, but I wouldn't go out on a limb and say I'm smarter than every single person who follows me and everyone who follows me is too dumb to make decisions of their own. I don't believe that. I think most people follow me absolutely are smart enough to figure out stuff on their own. And some people probably figured certain things out even before I did. But that's how Scott Adams talks to his audience. It's like he talks to his audience and he would say, when he used to disagree with me, he'd read my tweets on his podcast and he'd be like, Anomaly thinks that you're smart enough to go through the data on your own. Do you think you're smart enough to go through the data on your own? I don't. Do you? And I'm like, who the hell would listen to a guy who tells you you're too stupid to go through the data? His whole audience, besides his little Dilbert thing, is telling people, I'm above you, you're retarded, and you got to listen to me in order to like follow the truth. And it's like, what? I say you are smart enough to go through the data, and I want you to know how I came to this conclusion so you could come to it and we could come to it together. It's like, you get what I'm saying? Like, so with Scott, the reason I even brought that up is even though he's smart, his ego is so huge. He was wrong about one of the most important topics for 2 years because he's too egotistical, and if you're very egotistical, I don't know how smart you really are at that point. Like, if intelligence is, I don't know how to really measure it, but, people will say in certain quote unquote racist circles, they'll talk about IQ of racism, be like, oh, these people have a high IQ and these people have a low IQ. Well, if those people have such a high IQ, why did they fall for the big pharma thing? And, with other groups that people claim are so low IQ, they were the ones who rejected the tyranny the most. So, a lot of stuff, there's instinct, there's different types of intelligence where sometimes the smartest people are the stupidest people. I think Asians, by and large, are very intelligent on average, but they're so obedient. So how smart are you if you just listen to everything and you get tricked by your own leaders? Like it's one of those things where, there's a lot of things that go into this stuff, but I don't personally believe that some of these people just don't know this stuff. I think they do. They just don't care. And when it comes to certain countries, etc., there's a reason they're passing speech laws in this country. Are there laws that say, like if I said, I'll just give you an example, okay? If I said Saudi Arabia controls all our politicians, nothing happens, no one cares, no Saudi Arabians reach out to me because they don't care. And if they did, doesn't matter. I could say China owns American politicians. Nothing happens. No one cares. China owns all our politicians. Saudi Arabia owns all our politicians. South America owns our politicians. Europe owns our politicians. Britain owns our politicians. You could say any of that stuff and no one cares. But if you say Israel controls our politicians, you'll have 50 smear pieces written about you. The right wing will close their doors. Everybody will be calling for you not to speak at a Turning Point USA gig, and your life will be ruined if you ever wanted to be a conservative, and they won't let you into any circle. So it's like, and then Trump and DeSantis passed speech laws to make saying that illegal, even though there's on record a lobbying group called AIPAC that proudly admits that from Obama to Trump that they have a good relationship with every politician. You know what I'm saying? And the Dan Bongino blowhards are just there to piss you off. They're not there to lead you down any path of truth. He's just pissing off. It's going to happen today. Oh, yeah, he's really trying to help you. He's really telling you the truth. No, he's just giving you 80% truth to walk you off a cliff when it really matters. He's just there to anger you. But the reason people in his crowd and in a lot of the people's crowd get angrier and angrier and angrier is because they're aimlessly angry. If you think that your party actually cares about you, but nothing happens, you're going to get angry, And I'm not saying it's great, but it's like, once you realize what's really going on, it's like getting off a carousel. It's like you're on a carousel and it's just getting angrier and angrier. And I've been standing to the side of the carousel since 2019. The best thing that ever happened to me was getting blacklisted behind the scenes. So I don't have to hang out with these people, and I don't have to pretend, and and I don't have to like act stupid. And that's in many ways, like either you have to do that or you have to just go full blown whatever. But, it is what it is, I guess, when it comes to the wars, like, in this country, this is what I'll say. I respect Israel's right to do whatever they want in their own country. I don't vote there. I don't live there. I don't have a citizenship there. I'm not going around Israel telling them what to do. I think they have every right to do what they want to do. I mean, why does my opinion matter? It doesn't. But on that note, half the Republican Party doesn't respect me as an American citizen to believe in my own constitutional rights. And they'll smear me as an anti-Semite for wanting the First Amendment to be more powerful than a hate speech law. And, at the end of the day, if you say that this protest equals this and this equals this, so everybody's a terrorist, you don't have freedom anymore. And that's what they're walking down that path. And they've been walking down that path. So it's like, I just look at this through the lens of an American citizen. I've lived in this country for over 30 years. And every time a war breaks out, they take away our liberty. And then we go here and then we go there. And what they're doing in Ukraine and Israel is saying that citizens should not be allowed to question their government's war agenda. America, we're done if we can't do that. They tried to do that in 2002 and say you're a terrorist if you disagree with George Bush. They tried to do that with Syria. But then Donald Trump won the election and Tulsi Gabbard started speaking out. And long story short, it got to a point where half of America knew what was going on. And they can't cancel that opinion because it doesn't work that way. And it's the same thing with this topic. They so badly want to outlaw people in America for speaking out against the war. And that is a chess move equation that people will never see if they're following these blowhard conservative accounts that constantly just like freak you out and piss you off. You can support and defend a country without taking your First Amendment, pissing on it, and throwing it in a fireplace. You can support a foreign country without saying that it's hate speech to disagree. You could support a foreign country without saying you're ISIS if you're silent or you question one of their stories. Like, is that what you want in this country? And if you go around the world, this is a conversation that you'll never hear in Republican circles and on these pages because they're pretty much just there to not tell you this. That's their whole existence, is to just catch you in this carousel going nowhere. But if you go around the world, what's the most common speech law in the world? What are you not allowed to say in the world? What gets you in prison for questioning? You could notice certain patterns, and they have different speech laws in different countries. In Islamic countries, they have this. In Western countries, they have this. But if you could do the research and figure out what is the most common thing that you're not allowed to say everywhere and how desperate they are to bring that to America, it's very clear what's going on, as far as what the Republican Party is not saying. Because they've already passed this stuff, and might as well say it now because, I don't think that it's going to work, because if you look at this situation, there's just too many people that what are they going to do? It's like, this is what pissed me off. Sorry to get on a side tangent, but this is what pissed me off so much about controlled opposition Republicans, aka all of them, during the pandemic, because some things are a number game, right? If 90% of the country does one thing and they want to take away your freedom, they can do it if everybody follows. So in order to stop that from happening, there needs to be some sort of peaceful resistance. So when it came to the vaccine, Donald Trump, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Ron DeSantis, all of them, they're all controlled opposition to some extent, because they were telling, howdy, y'all, go get the Trump vaccine. Yucca, 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 get your Trump vaccine. It's a math equation. If people wanted to get it on their own, we didn't need Sarah Huckabee Sanders to tell about us. There's been no bigger propaganda in modern history than that being shoved down our throat. I don't think I think even the Amish knew there were vaccines, that, everyone knew it was there. So we didn't need the suggestion. But anyway, when it's a math equation and the Democrats, they're coming in with the mandates, if Republicans tell you to go get the Trump vaccine, they don't like you, not just for your health. I'm talking about strategically. It's like, if the Democrats want to mandate a product and Democrats are forcing everybody to get it, and Democrats are telling everybody to get it, and Democrats are taking away your job if you don't get it, and then Republicans stand there like Trump, DeSantis, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders and say, go get your Trump vaccine, they want you to lose your rights. Are people this naive that they think that I'm just so much smarter? Obviously, I'm smarter than Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but in general, I'm so much smarter than like Ron DeSantis. Like, he's just too dumb and Donald Trump's just too dumb. You think if I could figure this out with a laptop that they couldn't figure out, if enough people went and got that product, that we were going to lose our freedom forever? And the only reason that it didn't work is because they pushed the booster shot so much, and it got to a certain point where the amount of people getting it was not high enough to keep it going. It's a numbers game. And in America, it's also a numbers game, this game, and in the world. Listen, I want Ben Shapiro and Israel to think what they want, say what they want, defend themselves, show love, have a country. I don't care. It's not up to me. I'm not telling him not to do that. But in general, if you're going to say, let's just flatten this entire country like a parking lot, and anybody who flies that flag is a terrorist organization because their government is, it's not going to work, because the entire Arab world disagrees with him. Africa disagrees with him. South America disagrees with him. Half of the West disagrees with him, because they know that that's an exaggeration and it's a little bit too far. And in America, you have all these groups that don't agree. Like, what do what do you want to do? You want to arrest every Jewish person that waves a Palestine flag? You want to silence every person in America who disagrees with a war agenda? I understand that tensions are hot in that country, but it's the same It's the same thing with the Ukraine and Russia war. They did this over Russia. Russia fighters can't fight. Like, if you like Russia in America, you should be allowed to like Russia. People might not like it, but imagine shutting all that down. But there's not that many Russians in America, so it's easy. With this topic, I just don't think they're going to get away with it, because there's like hundreds of millions of people that disagree to some extent. Even if they like the country, they disagree with this, or maybe they just they see it as Ukraine, Russia, and they don't want to get involved. It's like, it's not, this game that they're trying to play is not going to work. I don't know, like, what, at what point can we just have a conversation about it and not go so far down the path of shutting down any dissent if it's peaceful, and that's how they do it. It's the same thing the left does. They'll say silence is violence, and disagreeing with Black Lives Matter means you want to kill George Floyd. It's like, what? And then they'll say, well, you can't possibly disagree with what I'm saying because we are underprivileged or whatever. And as far as Palestine too, I wouldn't want Palestinian protesters to say that you can't have an Israeli march. No offense, but no matter how much Israel does to Palestine, even if it was wrong, you should be allowed in the United States of America to wave your Israeli flag and have a protest and state your defense of why you're doing it and say it's justified, or say that this is my opinion. If Palestinian protesters tried to shut down Israel protests, I would disagree with it also, because it's a principled stance. If you don't allow people to support a foreign country of one side or the other, then this country's not free anymore. And if you don't allow someone to criticize your activism without calling that hate speech and passing hate speech laws, whether it's the left or the right. So I'm getting to the conclusion, and this is why I'm kind of calm now, is because I don't see Trump as saving this country or saving us. I don't see DeSantis as really doing anything. And as far as the left, they're obviously garbage, but it is what it is at this point. Biden's been there for 3 years. I don't know. I guess I see both sides as hypocrites. Like, they're both hypocrites. The people that are protesting in the streets with Palestine, they're total hypocrites too. They get to go to the Capitol and it's not an insurrection. It shouldn't be. The FBI shouldn't arrest them. But if those were Trump supporters, they would have, imagine if the Palestinian protesters were Trump protesters. Your ass would have been in prison. But because they're left wingers, they don't go to jail. And I'm not like everyone else where I'm saying they shouldn't go to jail, but neither should you if you did the same thing as them. So we have a double-tiered standard, which is why everyone's so pissed off when left wingers can do that but not get arrested. And it's not fair. But then you got Ben Shapiro saying that a bunch of Jewish Palestinian activists are Hamas. And it's like, both sides are full of shit. Both sides are hypocrites. Both sides don't believe in free speech. Both sides want to weaponize the Justice Department against people who protest against them. And once you realize that, it's like the only way that this is going to change is when enough people realize this. But it's too hard for everyone to do. Left wingers are too stubborn. You know what I'm saying? If the left wing could come together and say, hey, we don't agree with the right wing, but not every right winger is Charlie Kirk, or not every right winger is Donald Trump, but they don't do that. They just say everybody's that and you're all bad. And then the right does the same thing. You're all Hamas, you're all terrorists, you're all scum, you're all this, and you're all fascists. And it's like, both sides are hypocrites. Both sides have double standards. Both sides don't believe a single thing they talk about. So at this point, it's like, why should I get overly emotional about two sides that don't give a crap about me? When it comes to the Republican Party, why should I sacrifice my life and freedom for a party that would probably slap me in the face if they could? And that's the whole thing about January 6th. And I know a lot of people that got arrested at January 6th and got in trouble, they don't want to believe that Trump isn't the real deal, because if Trump's not the real deal, then they did all that for nothing, which is probably true. They thought that they're doing this for a guy that cares about them, but literally after they got arrested, he ran around and sold vaccines for 3 years and said, I saved the world with my vaccine scam. And then he pardoned a bunch of people that had nothing to do with you, Julian Assange, or Edward Snowden. So it's like, both sides don't want to admit they got tricked and bamboozled, but that's really the only solution. It's like, I agree with the right on almost everything, but also I understand where the left's coming from. And when it comes to this war, honestly, I'm not going to agree with the left because there's a diversity of thought there. But like, I would say that Ben Shapiro's logic of what to do is way worse than Joe Biden's on this topic. And that's not a cosign of Joe Biden. He's awful. But, It's like, I'm just seeing it for what it is. And it's a peaceful thing, because then if you feel this way, you don't have to run around acting like a psychopath. You don't have to hate all your left-wing friends, but they might hate you anyway. You could be reasonable and they might never want to talk to you again because they're that way. They want everyone to be this way. They, like, the one guy on my Instagram section, he said, Anomaly, and he was an American Christian, okay? He said, Anomaly, you don't understand. The government should round up people in Israel. They should do that in America too with the communists. It's like, if you're stupid enough to give the federal government the right to round up people that agree with socialism or communism, you're going to get rounded up, and you deserve to get rounded up. Because if you're so stupid to think that the United States government, if they had the judicial power to round people up, if you're so stupid that you think that they would round up communists and not you, you're an idiot. And like, this is like so many people in, like, they're so wound up by these people, and they're like, yeah, we're going to go get it. You're not getting anybody that's telling you to go get somebody. They're like setting you up with the feds. You know what I'm saying? You're not getting anybody. There is no civil war. You're not fighting anybody. Maine's not going down to Texas, and you're not going to have a wild, wild west. Everybody's sitting on Twitter, probably on the toilet, crapping themselves while they're putting out tweets. You're not going anywhere. All these people that tell you that you're going somewhere, they're either sending you to prison or to a promo code where they get 60% off of MyPillow. It's like, you're not going, and I'm not saying that I'm thrilled with what the left's doing, but it's like, there is going to be no civil war. Left wingers and right wingers are not going to march in the streets and fight each other and then give up once they lose. That's not happening. The only thing that's going to happen is these stupid proxy fed things where you show up and end up in a prison and you thought you were George Washington, but in reality, now you're facing 5 to 10 years in jail. Like, there is no, all these things that they're telling you it's not real. And it's not real because the party that you think you're defending isn't even defending you. They don't care. You know what I'm saying? Including Trump and DeSantis. I know that there's a argument for which one you think would do a better job, but at the end of the day, like, it's, once you get out of that paradigm, it's actually calming, where like, you look at everybody fighting and it's like, what's the point of even arguing with these people? Because it's just going nowhere. Like, this one guy was like saying something to me on Twitter. I ended up blocking him because I was like, I could sit here and argue with them, but like, why would I want to do that? And then his other comment, death to the communists, death to that. And it's like, yeah, communists suck, but like, what, like, where are you going? What's this doing? Like, what's posting that gonna matter? Like, who are you following? What are they telling you to do or think? It's just so, it's so exhausting, where I really feel better these last couple of weeks because I'm like, I'm not participating in whatever this sort of thing is. Like, I'm not, because I get it. There's certain things that certain people do right and wrong. And I'll say this too, because I personally think that Gavin Newsom's one of the worst politicians in the country, but I do have to give credit where it's due on one topic. I've been talking about for years, if you listen to me on this show, I've been talking about for years how certain ingredients should be banned. And I understand people say, well, it's the free market. It's not even a free market in America. You can't like legally give someone poison, or you can't do this. Like, it's not a free market where you could just give everyone anything. And what's going on with the food industry is disastrous. If there's one thing that limited government is for, it should be for, not feeding people crap that hurts them. Anyway, Gavin Newsom banned like Skittles and a lot of these ingredients, and people are like, most people like it, but some people are like, oh, it's not a free market. Guys, they could make Skittles with less shitty ingredients. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's harder to even find organic food now because the food industry is so corrupt that they're GMOing everything. Everything's fake. Everything's artificial dyes. Skittles should be banned from making bullshit. Like, they don't need to dye. There's ways to dye food coloring without using like cancerous products, but they don't give a shit about you. They're using products that hurt you because they just want to make money and they want it to look cool, and you're eating like poison. So he actually banned some of those ingredients. I've been asking them to do that for years, not the left, but I've been asked, I'm like, why does nobody care about this? So this is one of those things where it's like, Gavin Newsom's wrong about 95% of the stuff he does, but I agree with that. And I agreed with that before he did it. You know what I'm saying? Joe Biden wants to get rid of travel fees and stupid stuff. I mean, it's like, that's just like a hotel saying it's $300, but it's $500. That's like the one legit thing that I've heard him say. But in general, 99, I'm still not voting for these scumbags. I'm just saying in general, it's like once you get out of the just like, it's like you just start looking and you're like, all right, that guy's 95% full of shit, but he did that. That's pretty chill. You know, this guy's 50% full of shit, but he did that. Or, you know, my favorite politicians are like 10% full of shit, but 90%. And it's like, I just see it that way. It's not like a game where my guys are going to fight the other side. They're working with the other side. I mean, the easiest equation of this is listen to Trump talk about Gavin Newsom. In your head, it's Trump versus Gavin Newsom, but in Trump's head, it's Trump and Gavin Newsom hanging out. He's a friend of mine. I don't talk bad about him because he's cool with me. So like, you know, a lot of these news hosts are basically just like making like a story that's not real to piss you off and capitalize off it, but it's not real. And that's why people are getting so angry. And it's obviously not just the right. The left thinks they're fighting fascism, even though their party's probably more fascist than this party. We're fighting fascism. The only way to fight fascism is if we got to mandate vaccines and call everybody terrorists if they don't get the vaccine. It's like, of course left wingers are pissed off all the time because they're listening to Rachel Madcow tell them that, you know, like the vaccine works to perfection and anybody who doesn't like it is a bad person. So they're just getting more and more mad. And the more and more mad they get, they think they're going somewhere with their anger, but they're actually just even dumber than the right wingers they hate. So it's like, and then the right does the same sort of thing. It does the same sort of thing where they're just like, oh, I'm going to fight Ilhan Omar. And dude, I don't like Rashida Tlaib. I don't like Ilhan Omar. I disagree with almost everything they do. I don't think they're smart. Honestly, I don't think either of them really likes America that much. With that being said, I'm not going to call Rashida Tlaib a terrorist because she likes Palestine more than Israel. She's Palestinian. Like, you know, the same way Ben Shapiro obviously likes Israel more than Palestine. Why wouldn't he? But I wouldn't call him a terrorist either for liking the country. And I understand, but it's like, you know, the everybody's just so stupid. It's just like a stupid show, you know, that's gone on for so long. And it's like, you know, the characters are not even convincing anymore. So someone said there's no fix for any of this. Well, the fix is to do your own thing in this world. You get what I'm saying? Even in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you still had Olympic athletes. You still had people creating businesses. A lot of your ancestors and your grandparents created businesses. And in general, it's like, you know, whether Trump or Biden is in the office, in order to live a meaningful life, it all starts with you. You know what I'm saying? You're not the victim to this person or that person. They're not hurt. It is what it is. And in general, if the world was perfect, it would not be the world. It would be heaven. And if the world was perfect, it wouldn't necessarily be like interesting. You know, there would be no dynamic ups and downs, highs and lows. So in general, I think that the solution is focusing on yourself. And this is what everybody's like, no, but I got to do activism because that's what's going to do it. But everyone's doing activism, and like 90% of people doing activism are all over the place. And that's why, you know, nothing changes. Once people kind of fix themselves, everything falls into place a little bit more. But my conclusion is the left is losing it. But the reason that the country is so bad is not just what they're telling everybody, that the left is so bad and the right's really fighting them. But, you know, it's like everybody but Donald Trump is bad. Like it's like a WWE plot for naive conservative boomers where it's like, oh, the left is bad and most of the right is bad except for Donald Trump. He's the guy that's going to save me. It's like a script that they're going with. Like that's not real either. So, you know, people are going to spend all this energy and time doing this, and then they're going to figure out at a certain point that that's not even true. And I'm not saying to not vote for him at this point. I like after the last 2 weeks of DeSantis, like the fact that Ben Shapiro likes DeSantis this much makes me not want to even vote for him. So it's like, you know, if DeSantis is so good on domestic policy, but then when push comes to shove, he's going to run us off a cliff and try to throw you in jail. Like, it's like, what's the point of voting for this guy? And I know I'm not trying to overly exaggerate, but like, let's just look at Trump's first the 4 years of Trump. I know people think this is a mistake, but that's because they haven't like figured it out yet. It's like, okay, he does a solid job, right? Good economy, great economy, jobs, you know, whatever. And then the economy's imploded and jobs don't exist anymore. And nobody could go to, no one could go to their job. And he's on stage with Fauci and he's printing trillions of dollars like a communist and he's running around selling vaccines. So the reality is like, does it even matter? You vote for your guy and he does 3 years of what you want, but the fourth year is so bad that it destroys everything good he did. Like, there's only two options. People think that was just like this mistake, but that's their mistake. Like it wasn't China that did it to Donald Trump. It wasn't like the Democrats' ploy. They didn't do it to the whole world to beat his election. You're just looking at him and putting way too much stake in him to tell yourself what really happened, because it's like, that's a way to make a group of people completely useless. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's with the QAnon stuff too. It's like QAnon is the same thing as Operation Trust back in Bolshevik era. They told all the patriots that it's happening. Don't believe your own eyes. Someone's going to fix your life behind the scenes, and the military generals, you don't have to do anything because they're going to do it. And they got all the people on the right side of history to act like nothing was happening. So they kind of just like wasted their time as the Bolsheviks took over. And that's kind of like with the whole Trump thing, like QAnon and not. He's a figure to make you feel like you have a horse in the race, to just waste your time, because the next 10 years are probably like the most important time for you to wake up. So if they didn't have him there, you would have already figured out that no one was there. And then you would be talking to your politicians and trying to get them to do stuff. But as long as you think you have a horse in the race, it's not like a good thing. It just makes it so nobody actually does anything. And it's like, when Trump passes a law that takes away stuff, no one cares. But if DeSantis did it, they'd care. When Trump prints trillions of dollars, he's not a socialist, but when Biden does it, he is. When Trump sells vaccines like a communist, he's not a bad guy, but people get mad at Ben Shapiro when he does that. But when Trump does it, it doesn't matter because we like Trump. It's like, it's the same dynamic where it's like, it's all just kind of like there as a show, in my opinion. So someone said neither party's completely innocent, for sure, but it's not this is not a pessimistic message, because at the end of the day, if you think Donald Trump's going to save you or do something, and you waste 10 years, and then at the end of it, you realize that it's not true, now you're kind of like pissed. Now you're flustered. Now you feel like you wasted time. But if you're focused on yourself, working on yourself, not playing the victim, realizing that your party doesn't actually care, doing the inner work, doing something that gives your life purpose, but then at the same time, with your political activism, instead of drooling over a puppet, you're actually standing firm against some of their policies. Now you have a country of competent people that are able to actually influence policy, versus a country of followers and cheerleaders that basically is just getting pulled along for the ride, And I've said this before, but when it comes to the lockdown, if Hillary Clinton were in office, do you think they would have been able to lock the country down? I don't think so. Do you think that Hillary Clinton would have got all the Republicans to stay locked down for as long as everybody except for, South Dakota did? I don't think so. I think the only person who could have united the right into thinking that a China virus was worth doing 2 months of lockdowns was Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump was in office, he told Sweden they should have locked down. He told Georgia they should have locked down. Like, you could perceive it as this huge mistake that he made, but it's like, you're just not, you're just getting played, in my opinion. It's the same with people that are like, well, Obama is black, so he must be good, or he's cool, so maybe he just made a mistake. It's like, he's just there to convince you that something's going to be different, because if a white guy started a bunch of wars in the Middle East and Republicans are scammers and they're just destroying everything, which they were, and everybody gets pissed off at Republicans and they're like, this white guy. It's like, well, here's a black guy that's totally different, and he's a Democrat, and he's like totally going to like stop the wars. And he expanded the wars. I mean, Obama, but here's the thing that everybody's like, and I'm not trying to argue with people, but like Obama, like when people say, oh, Obama's running the government, it's Obama's running. Like, you think Obama has that much power? You think Obama even ran his own presidency? Obama was there for 8 years. What did he do different than what Mitt Romney would have done? What war policy did he do that was so different from what George Bush wanted to do? It's all, you listen to that one general, I think his name was Wesley Clark. They had the list 10 years prior, So it's like when Republicans say Obama's running the government, it's like, that's just like a thing that they tell you to, like, Obama didn't even run his own administration, let alone running it now. The dude, I mean, he has probably some influence to some extent, but it doesn't, like, it's all just like a character. Here's the Bush guy, here's the Obama guy, here's the Trump guy, here's Biden. And someone said Trump talked to the CEOs and just like that, a lockdown. And it's not saying it's his fault, but it's like that character was what was needed. Here's the thing with the next election. Now I'm starting to wonder, And I actually said this 8 months ago. I said, if they need a war, you could look at my Twitter. I said this before the Israel-Palestine thing. I'm not saying it never happened because it was going on for decades, but you get what I'm saying. Before this whole thing broke out a week ago, I said, if they need a war with China or a war with Iran, they're going to bring in a Republican, because a Democrat starts a war with Ukraine. A Democrat expands wars when no one's paying attention. A Democrat mandates the vaccine, apparently now, but a Republican is the one that's going to escalate war with Iran and China. And if you look at Biden, he's not trying to escalate this Israel war. Who's trying to escalate it? Shapiro, Rubin, Trump, DeSantis. You know what I'm saying? Who knows what Trump would do? He's kind of a wild card, but I feel like if they need a war, then they'll go with like a Republican. But if they don't need that war, then they won't. It depends. But, that's kind of just how I see it now. Someone said, I'm sick of the disappearance of the middle class. Well, here's the thing too, is like, and this is the part that people are missing when it comes to the lockdown. The disappearance of the middle class is not just the Democrats' fault. And it's not just the Republicans' fault. You talk to a Democrat, they say the Republicans did this. You talk to a Republican, they say the Democrats did this. They're both doing it. They're both just lying to you. Trump printed more money than Obama. I don't say that to badmouth Trump. I'm just telling people this inflation was coming anyway. Trump is better on oil, but he printed too much money. So this disappearance of the middle class is a bipartisan operation. And the only reason no one figured it out is because both sides are brainwashed by the character that they like or that they hate. They're too emotional. So that's all I'm saying. My analogy today that I thought of that I wanted to share with you guys, I said it earlier. When it comes to these Trump influencers or DeSantis influencers that are just telling you to be pissed off all the time, what they're doing to you, if it was a fight, is if it were a 12-round fight, I would tell you guys, listen, you can come out swinging, but you want to be intelligent with your energy because you got 12 rounds. And if you gas out, you're going to get knocked out quickly. You got to preserve your energy for a 12-round fight. And the Dan Bongino types of the world and these type of people, they're just telling you to come out swinging all the time. And you come out, you're hitting air, the guy's standing over there. And by the time the fight starts, a minute in, you get knocked out because you're just gassing yourself out. You're not playing chess, you're playing checkers. So, I'm just asking people to play chess in the sense of like, anybody that's just pissing you off, they're giving you like 80% of the story, pissing you off. And then it's like you end up getting nothing. Like anybody, which is almost everybody, that's telling you that it's Biden-inflation. Biden sucks. I don't want him to win the election. He didn't help. He prints too much money. He's sending too much money to Ukraine. Now we're going to send money to 2 wars. They're just milking the middle class in America dry. Biden is absolutely complicit. But if they act like what happened during COVID under Donald Trump didn't help spark this also, they're lying to you. It's a bipartisan operation. If you look at the charts of how much money Trump printed, more money than any president ever, and the only one that's even going to come close is going to be Biden. They're both doing it. They both did it. They don't care. But as long as people think that one side really cares, that's why nothing ever changes. And they divide you against your own family and against this person and against that person. And they inorganically divide the races and the religions. As a religion, you're going to be divided naturally in some way, but the way they're doing it is inorganic. You know what I'm saying? It's not organic. It's not authentic. It's not helpful. They're doing it in a way that isn't real. It's a divide and conquer strategy. So I think people are waking up. I think every time something happens, it really wakes a lot of people up, but that's where we are as a nation. I would say if you can't change something, don't freak out about it. Cause at the end of the day, I can't stop a war. I can't fix the world. So I'm not going to freak out about it all day. And I don't want you to freak out. And I know people are telling you to freak out, but don't freak out because there's not that much you can do. So why should you worry every day? Enjoy your life, find things that give you joy and purpose and do those and enjoy yourself and don't buy into the fear. With that being said, everybody sees the middle class shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So if you want to be a political activist of some sorts or do a part, enjoy your life, do your thing, be a good person. But also, you can't just like a character and think that you're doing something, and this is the thing too, where it comes no one wants to hear this, but now, RFK, I hope that RFK could be the head of the FDA, but he's not really that different when it comes to other stuff. And he's going to be a puppet too. I know it sounds crazy, but it's you could believe in him for 2 years and then he's not who you thought he was, and then you go to the next person. It's like a ping pong game. Like people, listen to them, say what they say, but the whole game involves people bouncing around like ping pong balls. Once people stop doing that, your activism is going to be more clear, and your voice is going to matter more than just like running around like the whole. I've said this since the beginning. At a certain point, I like Trump more than DeSantis. For a long time, I like DeSantis more than Trump. But I always said two things. One, if the election were tomorrow, here's who I'd vote for. Why? Because I know who these people are. I don't trust Trump or DeSantis. So if they appear good to me today, they might not in 3 months, because they'll change on a dime, because that's who they are. With that being said, I also say the Trump versus DeSantis fighting on Twitter is a controlled trap. Like the Trump supporters that are bullying the DeSantis supporters and vice versa, it's all a joke. These are people that they weren't cool in high school, or they want to relive high school, and they're just trying to fight with each other and hang on to their team and act like they're so cool. I've said this the whole time, even when people are like, oh, you're a DeSantis show, this and that. I said if the election were tomorrow, I'd probably vote for him a bunch of times. Now, I'm not sure. The reason I said if it were tomorrow is because I don't trust Ron DeSantis and I don't trust Donald Trump. So I don't know who they're going to be in 2 weeks. So I say if the election were tomorrow, that's my lesser of two evils at the moment. With that being said, everybody fighting each other, there's certain things that neither of them are going to do. But people who obsess and idol worship over Donald Trump, they don't want to admit that. So now they're just playing cosplay with their friends. It's Comic-Con. And then the DeSantis people, they're acting insane too. And honestly, as far as I would say the politicians are the same, they're both going to be puppets. But when it comes to Trump, his supporters, they're a little bit questioning this conflict a little more. And the DeSantis supporters are like bloodthirsty psychos. Like I really went out on a limb when it wasn't popular and said for months that I like DeSantis more than Trump. And I stand by everything I said, because anything I said recently, I said it for a reason. It's true. With that being said, you notice a pattern of like half of Trump's base is like that. Half of Trump's base is questioning things, and then like DeSantis's camp is like freaking out at anybody questioning anything that Israel's ever done. And it's like, is that the DeSantis camp? That's not what I took from DeSantis. I liked his domestic policy. I never really knew what his foreign policy was, but apparently this isn't about America and this isn't about domestic policy. This is about, everybody that I follow that like DeSantis, they're going nuts over this war and they're freaking out. They're calling people anti-Semites and conspiracy theorists. And it's like Hamas. And it's like, dude, I'm not voting for DeSantis. If this is what his movement is, I'm not voting for it. I knew he passed a few laws and stuff, but I didn't realize it was this bad. But at the same time, that's why I don't come and say I'm endorsing him or I'm definitely voting. I've said every time, I say if the election were tomorrow, I don't say this because I'm a fence sitter. I don't say this because I don't have conviction. I say this because politicians are politicians. It's not what you think it is and what a lot of people think it is. So I'm just telling you based on the information I have now. If Donald Trump is the greatest president I've ever seen, and then he turns into Bill Gates Jr. and a communist and starts printing money and say Sweden locked down, I'm not a traitor for realizing that he changed. I'm an American citizen with a brain that realizes that he wasn't who I thought he was. And I'm not the bad guy in that situation, And with DeSantis, it's the same thing. If I like 9 out of 10 things that he does, I could vote for him. But also, if it turns out that I think that he is so bad with foreign policy and he's willing to do even more, then I have the right to not vote for him and change my mind off of that. But when it comes to Trump and DeSantis, this is my opinion. DeSantis seems a little bit more neocon war hockey. Trump is like an anomaly in the sense of like the best and worst thing about Donald Trump is he doesn't actually have any conviction, where it's like DeSantis has conviction with domestic policy, and it's why he's a better leader than Trump domestically. DeSantis has conviction with neocon policy. It's why he's not better than Trump. Trump's an anomaly because it's hard to tell what he's going to do because he doesn't actually like have any strong stances. Like he's pro-life and he's pro-choice. You know what I'm saying? He's mad at Netanyahu, but he stands by Netanyahu. You know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't like vaccines, but he loves vaccines. He was a skeptic of vaccine injuries. Now he doesn't think they exist. Like Trump, he's almost like the ultimate con artist and the ultimate sellout, because even like like Lindsey Graham has conviction to war, Biden has conviction to certain, well, actually Biden's kind of like a puppet too. He just flows with the wind. But like With Trump, it's like, I might toss my vote for this guy because I don't trust him. But it's like, I don't like, is he going to do good foreign policy? I don't know. I think he'll do a good job in Ukraine. And with Israel, I think Trump's just as much of a puppet as DeSantis, but he's like a wild card because he has no conviction. Like, he doesn't have any like stances that seem like they matter that much to him. You get what I'm saying? Like, DeSantis really cares about like the kids in school stuff. DeSantis really cares about pro-life. Trump doesn't give a shit. He's pro-life one day. He's speaking at a pro-life rally, and he's just like you. The next day, he doesn't give a shit about it, and he thinks that that it shouldn't pass because he wants to win an election. Trump cares about himself, and I'm not saying this from a leftist perspective. It's just like the reality of it. Like, when he talks about the election, he doesn't care about elections. He cares about him. When he talks about vaccines, he doesn't care about vaccines. He cares about him. When he talks about mandates, you could hear that he doesn't care about mandates. He cared about himself. And he said if he were president, we wouldn't need mandates because everybody would have wanted to get the vaccine. Like, he's a fascinating character where, like, straight up Trump is hilarious, but in some ways it makes him terrible because he has no convictions to any policy because he's like a complete narcissist. But at the same time, it's better to have no conviction than conviction to a wicked agenda. So it's like, is Trump going to, like, what's he going to do? No one knows because I feel like he doesn't even know. It's like, I think Trump would possibly like end the war in Ukraine. Possibly. I don't know. I think Trump possibly would be better with the Israel-Palestine thing than DeSantis. Possibly. I don't know. He might earn my vote, not because I like him or trust him, because he has no conviction, and that doesn't make like a good leader, and it makes a good politician, but it's just fascinating where you're like, what do you believe? I don't know that I don't know that he has any opinions that are like super strong. Like, if you think pro-life is murdering babies, you believe it. Trump doesn't believe it. He's just like, what's better for me today? If there's millions of people in the streets of DC and they're pro-life, then I'm pro-life because I want to speak in front of millions of people. I'm Donald Trump. I want them to like me. If I feel like I might not, Republicans would be better off killing babies now because I just said they were babies to the pro-life people to win an election, then I'm going to win it. Someone said, what does the polls say? I think Trump's the front runner by far in the Republican primary, and I think he's a slight front runner against Biden, maybe, but it keeps flip-flopping. But the real answer is not, is Trump going to win? It's, if he wins, is he going to do anything? If he wins, is he going to make it better? I think that he'll do a better job with his attorney general than Biden. I don't know, I don't know what Trump would do in Israel. Would he try to strike a peace deal? Would he try to flatten it? Would he disagree with Netanyahu? Would he agree? It's like, dude, Trump is so funny because, like, say like Netanyahu, say what you want about Netanyahu, but he likes Israel and he's committed to, like, I believe, expanding Israel, right? He's committed to his agenda, Netanyahu. Trump, I feel like he's not really committed to anything. Like, for example, it's not about what Netanyahu does to America. It's like about what Netanyahu does to Trump. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he looks at Trump the wrong way, or he's mad that he tweeted about Biden's presidency, like, Trump doesn't give a shit about Americans. Like, he's just like, did Netanyahu tweet a thank you to Joe Biden before the election was truly over? Like, that's what matters to him. It's kind of funny where it's like, it might make him the best president. I'm not ruling it out. He might be the best option because he has no conviction. But it's like, if he does something right, I'm not even sure if he's doing it for the right reasons. You know what I'm saying? I think building a wall is pretty straightforward. He didn't finish it, but he tried or didn't try. I don't know. Even with illegal immigration, on one hand, Trump wants to deport everybody. On another hand, he wants to keep them because they're nice. There's a lot of nice students and nice young boys and girls going to school, and Trump doesn't want to deport them. He's a nice guy, in some ways. Other ways he's not, but like, he doesn't really have conviction. And in this world, would you rather Lindsey Graham, who has conviction to war, DeSantis, who has conviction to pass a speech law, or Trump, who just does it because he's told, but he doesn't really care. And it's a fascinating, like the more I know, it's like the weirder it gets, but I'm back in the air. My vote, no one has inspired me to vote. And the funniest thing, I want to say this before I leave. The funniest thing about me questioning Vivek Ramaswamy, I don't hate Vivek Ramaswamy. He came from the pharmaceutical industry. I heard multiple interviews where it just wasn't adding up. And I gave him, I think, the fairest, most journalistic, toughest interview he's probably ever had in a fair direction. I did that because if he's running for president, I think people have the right to study his pharmaceutical past and try to figure out if he's the real deal or not. With that being said, I kind of see Vivek like Trump, where it's like he doesn't really have conviction to anything, but at the same time, he's saying all the right things right now. And I don't know. It's like out of, maybe he is better than DeSantis. You know, I think DeSantis has proven himself on domestic policy, but if DeSantis is going to jump and pass speech laws for a foreign country, then conviction's not good in that direction. Where Vivek, you know, him and Tucker, they're saying a lot of very intelligent stuff, you know, so he's not going to win. He has no chance, but it's like, I do think Vivek deserves a role in the Republican Party. If Lindsey Graham can be a senator, Vivek could be a senator. If Nancy Mace can be a, you know, congresswoman, Vivek could be a congresswoman. He just has to transgender. But no, you get what I'm like. I wasn't trying to like burn this guy's life down. It's like, I don't trust him. I'm not voting for him, but he definitely deserves a role in this corrupt party to see what he does. Because the more he gets smeared and the more they get mad at him, the more I start to think that he's not going to cave as quickly as other politicians. And maybe that changes, but you know, I'm willing to roll the dice on him. It's like with Trump too. People just, they don't understand where I'm coming from. We're like, oh, you hate, I don't hate him. I'm just, if he says a vaccine saved 100 million lives and I'm interviewing him, I'm not like a bootlicker, like, oh, that sounds really great, daddy. You know, like everybody else, it's like, oh, you know, it's like, I'm going to ask a question about it. I'm going to challenge him. That's what I think as a citizen. It's like, you know, it doesn't mean I hate him. I think that if I do my job better, that politicians will be more transparent, and then maybe you'll get something done. If you keep chasing their tails, like pin the tail on the donkey, you're never going to get anything. Being loyal to a politician is like, you know, insert witty metaphor here, you know. I didn't have one on, I couldn't think of one, but it's like being loyal to a politician is like being loyal to a freaking like insurance salesman. Like it's not, you're not doing what you think you're doing. So if they're loyal to you, then be loyal to them. But if they're not loyal to you and they've done things that you don't agree with to an extent and bragged about socialist scams that you don't like, your job is not to not notice it. Like that's not loyalty. That's like dumb, you know? So let me know what you guys think. And the funniest thing now is I'm so over like the whole Trump and DeSantis fight where it's like, I genuinely don't care who wins. I'm fine with Trump winning. They're both whatever to me. I don't care. So when people get mad at me now, I just laugh. I'm like, I don't care. I like DeSantis. You're a dick. Go vote for him then. You know, good luck. Well, Trump. Okay, go ahead. I don't care. I'm talking about bigger things. You know, you guys could go fight over that. I don't care. In 7 months, it's probably going to be Trump. Trump's not going to lose to DeSantis, most likely. At this point, I don't see it. Someone said, I think DeSantis would handle Israel and foreign policy in general. Trump might hire DeSantis. If Mike Pompeo could be State Department, then so could DeSantis. But, you know, it's just like, whatever. I can only do so much. I'm not going to freak out or cry about it, but I'm also not going to fight with people. Dan said, you're not really helping. All right, Dan. Let me know real quick before I leave. What is really helpful? Since I'm not helping, what do you think is really helpful? What part do you not like, and what do you think would be very helpful? Let me know, and then I'm going to take off. Appreciate you. Not mad at you. I'm just curious because I'm not being helpful. Talking about self-awareness and self-accountability and seeing through the deception and not being angry about it and being calm and reasonable. That's clearly not a solution to you. So what's your solution? Yeah, I know he's wrong, but I'm giving him the platform. I like to be challenged. If my thoughts can't be challenged, then, you know, What's the point? Then I must not know what I'm talking about. Someone said you change your mind every day. I don't though, Dan. But also it's new intel. Whenever I said that I like Trump or I like DeSantis, I liked Donald Trump because he was leading the country good. Then Donald Trump became a socialist, a communist. He printed $6 trillion. He sold vaccines. He morphed into Bill Gates and then ran around the country pathologically lying about it, saying he saved 100 million lives. I'm not dumb enough or fake enough to think that that's cool. So the Trump that I liked in 2018 when I wrote the song and the Trump now, it's not the same people. I don't have to agree with that, and I don't. When it comes to DeSantis, I've always said if the election were tomorrow, I would vote for him. Why have I said that consistently? Because I know I've never said that I trust DeSantis. You can watch I said I don't trust him. I already know he's passed speech laws. I already know he's trying to infringe on the First Amendment. I already know he'll call you an anti-Semite if you say that. I already know his media will probably put out worse press than the left on me. Like, I already know this, but I still am reasonable. And I'm like, I think he has conviction to domestic policy. And honestly, I would trust him to build a wall quicker than Trump. I would trust him to, clean up the country better than Trump. I think he'll hire better than, but at the same time, I don't know now. When I look at his foreign policy and how gung-ho he is to be Lindsey Graham Jr. in many ways, I don't know that he would hire better. But here's the thing. It doesn't even matter because Donald Trump hired Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo and Ron DeSantis on foreign policy is like water and water. They're the same thing. I'm not perceiving this fight between Trump and DeSantis as like it's all so important. I'm just perceiving it as like it's they're both I don't know. They're both whatever. But I do think that DeSantis would probably beat Biden by more. Trump, you're running, you're running this game of like, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? Is he going to shit on half the country a day before the election? Is he going to yell on True Social? Trump acts like a baby. Like he just yells things on True Social, like into the wind. I don't know. I don't think I've really changed that much. I'm just interpreting it as we go along, but appreciate you. If you really, 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 really believe in politicians really, really hard and you're loyal to the foil, and when they sell vaccines and do communism, you love it and you don't question it because you're just so loyal. To me, that's why America's falling apart, because Democrats and Republicans are so loyal to their party, but their party's not loyal to them. And Democrats were loyal to Obama, but Obama wasn't loyal to them. And Republicans were loyal to George Bush, and George Bush wasn't loyal to them. So I think your loyalty needs to lie to your country, to your family, to your values. And, a politician is not your best friend. If they were your cousin, if Donald Trump was your father or your brother, then yeah, be loyal to Donald Trump. That's your boy. That's your family. But, do you have to be loyal to Joe Biden because he's the president and you're anti-American? If not, that's not really how politics works. But I don't really care what people think. These are my thoughts. Appreciate you guys. God bless. And letting you guys know, thank you guys for supporting. Beanies, sweatshirts, long sleeves. I'm looking at more products soon, but I did stock up for the winter. So check it out at dreamrare.com. We got a lot of stuff. And the sweatshirts I think are the best sweatshirts out. They're very comfortable and people really like them. So check out the God is Great sweatshirts. I want to say this too before I end. No joke, like with the God bless hat or the God is Great sweatshirt, it's a real vibe when you wear it. And, people will say stuff a lot, like not like in a weird way, but like people are like, oh, you get a conversation with someone who loves God, and just like usually very nice people will say stuff to you. So it's a real vibe. I picked clothes that I would like wearing that just felt good. Not like, I didn't want to put like crazy statements that are like so in your face that like it bothers people and stuff, so it's a for sure vibe. So check it out, dreamrare.com. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Dream Rare Podcast. Thanks for hanging out.